roll call would be, let's see, Mr. Gray, Mr. McDonald, Mrs. Brock, Mr. Trudell, Mrs. Katuli, bingo lady, and Mr. Worthen. I remembered your name. That's pretty good. They'll tell you. I figured. All right. First order of business would be citizens' participation. Mr. White. Oh, I'm sorry. Before that, I have to announce again that we are being recorded tonight. All right, Mr. Whitehead and I have agreed on his location, so everybody knows that we're being recorded. Yes, Mr. White.
As your photographer for the last year, I want to tell you how much I appreciate the opportunity to do this, and the fact that you've offered your cooperation and given me your cooperation just by appearing normal and doing the normal things. Thank you.
Thank you.
I also want to tell you I hope the public enjoyed, or at least had a chance to see 9 or 10 hardworking people almost every Wednesday night working on their behalf. And I know from being here that doesn't all happen here. A lot of it happens at home, reviewing stuff. And so I want to tell you thank you for your participation this year. Having said that, I hope that next year I can solicit your cooperation in going forward, because I think, a little selfishly perhaps, but I think that the opportunity to be heard on TV gives you a chance to get the FinCom message out where it doesn't otherwise get out. And if this committee can only report to town meeting, that's about a twice-a-year occasion. And I think that the town deserves the opportunity to hear your discussions more intensely at other times. So I'm hoping that you will not only allow this continued taping of your meetings, but that we will be able to highlight certain issues and be able to have those discussed a little more thoroughly, perhaps, than you're able to do here in a normal meeting. But that's to be worked on in another year. I hope that we can move forward with that, because I'd like to think that between the papers that we can get here, and the TV station, you have an opportunity to get your messages out in a much more informative way than perhaps you've been able to do so far, or anybody preceding you has been able to do. But in conclusion, thank you very much, and I've enjoyed it.
Thank you.
Thank you. That's great. Before you get up though, Bob, sit back down again. Let's take it from the other side, okay? Last year when you said that you were departing from the committee, all right, and you didn't really want to renew, a lot of us were pretty disappointed. And you proposed what you've told the selectmen to be the 10th man. And we all pretty much bought into the idea. And I think that's one of the better ideas that we had during the course of the last year. I think you've been very instrumental in assisting the committee. And not only that, but your approach to doing it, everybody was very comfortable. And at no point did you ever interfere in the meeting in any way. That takes quite a bit for somebody who's televising and taping and doing that kind of stuff. There was a high degree of comfort. And I think the committee owes you a vote of thanks. All right, for so moved. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? My God, the only thing we've done unanimous this year. Thank you very much, Bob.
You're welcome. And I voted by myself before I came in here, and I didn't vote for you.
Contrary to my past practice, the citizens' participation, that was one. Anyone else for citizens' participation? All right, contrary to my past practice, we're going to vote on the meeting minutes first, so I don't forget them. All right, minutes for May 9th, 2012.
I make a motion that we accept them.
A motion to accept, I have a second? I have a second. Any additions or corrections? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Seeing, it was 7-0-0. The minutes of June 6, 2012. Motion to accept the minutes.
So moved.
Mr. Trudell, second by Ms. Cattouli. Sorry. Any corrections, additions? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? 7-0-0. Next item is committee business, applications and interviews for open member positions. We have an additional application. Oh, I see she just arrived.
Timing's everything.
Please come forward, introduce yourself. For the
Ladies and
record,
gentlemen,
for the record.
For those of you who don't know me, I'm Marilyn Donahue. Previously served on the Finance Committee. Did not renew my application last year as I thought that we were going to have the opportunity to relocate, but as you can see, I'm still here. And I just felt it was a good time to come back and reapply. Now that it looks like we're going to be facing an override situation with debt exclusion votes, what I brought to the table for FinCom last year, or last time around, was to try to get people to focus on the issues and not get hot under the collar and try to get to the truth of the matter and just put basic facts on the table. And I think we need that more than ever now with the override and the debt exclusion. So just as far as I can be a facilitator for that, I would like to work with you.
Do you have any questions? Mr. McDonald?
First off, I thank you, because you were the first person to ever encourage me to be part of this, if I remember correctly.
And you still thank me for that?
If you remember our conversations way back when, I was a totally different mindset than I am now, which a lot of it is, and what you told me came true.
Well,
Anyway,
then she.
yeah, well, so was she.
Well, that was it. I was told that you really want to understand the issues, join the Finance Committee. It's an eye-opening experience, and I think it's important for all of us to get that word out there to the public who doesn't see it, doesn't understand it.
And now that's where I was going. One of the things that you had mentioned, I don't know if it was right after you left, that you really wanted to do something to get our message out to the public more. And I, of course, with the people watching the meetings now, for whatever reason they're watching them, at least they're watching them. But I think that's one of the things I've always admired is your ability to write and get the point out without any political view on it. And I'm hoping that, you know, that's something that we could use on the Finance Committee as well.
Anyone else? Nobody has any questions?
I'm personally glad to see you again.
Thank you, Doctor.
Mr. Trudell?
All I can remember is positive things from Marilyn and her writing
That's good.
and her dedication to Finance Committee. I have only good memories.
Did you, I'm sorry, go ahead,
I
Sam?
would certainly join in on your course. I certainly enjoyed working with you very much.
Thank you. And in my year off, I actually took a class in accounting to fill in the gap of my education, because you people who speak accounting terms use debits in strange ways. And now I understand and can actually speak the same. I understood the concept. It was just the language you spoke. Now I can actually read a budget and understand it.
Take a banking course, debits are credits and credits are debit.
Yeah.
It'll really mess your mind up.
I didn't want to confuse it.
But I do the banking thing. I do the numbers thing. I get the whole concepts of it. But
Anyone else? You did pass the psychological screening, right?
What, the fact that you have to be insane to want to do this? Yeah, I understand that part of it.
All right, well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for your consideration.
Committee recommendations for reappointments and new members. We, Mrs. Cattouli and Mr. Camerano wish to be reappointed. Does the committee wish to support them? Motion to that
I make a
effect?
motion that we approve Mrs. Cattouli and Mr.
Come here.
Yeah, Dominic, Mr. Dominic.
It would be boring without
For
it.
next year.
Second, I have a second, Mr. Riddell. Any discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? 700. We have two applications for new members, Mrs. McCarthy and Mrs. Donahue. All right, I have a motion for either one of them, please.
Motion to appoint Mrs. Donahue.
Second.
I have a motion to appoint Mrs. Donahue, seconded by Mrs. Bronk. Any discussion?
Just for discussion purpose, I think that both candidates were, I want to thank them both for applying, and it's wonderful to get nice, qualified people. And I encourage people to stay interested and stay coming to the meeting, and
I think I'm a little
Anyone else?
confused.
Pardon?
I think I'm a little confused.
Why?
when she says that, we're in
No,
trouble.
I'm just a little confused. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 9. 9 chairs, so it's only Dick's chair we're filling, correct?
Yes,
Yes.
but you and Dominic were up for reappointment.
Right. And how many candidates do we have altogether?
Two.
We had two.
Oh, okay. I was just confused.
Okay.
Bingo went late last night.
We did.
Bingo counting. Any, counting all that money from bingo. Mr. McDonald.
I want to say, you're right, Donna, I agree that we have two good candidates. One of the issues I have is that whatever we vote tonight really only goes partway into, because now it goes down to the appointing authority to appoint.
Yes.
Okay.
You got it. The final decision's mine.
And who's,
You know,
Oh, and the chairman of the Board of Selectmen and the moderator. Before we take a vote, Mrs. McCarthy, I would tell you, ask Mr. Worthen, just because we say no on the first pass, doesn't mean if you have patience that you might not find yourself on this committee.
yeah.
You waited how long, Tom? 11 months, right?
I did.
All right,
How long?
and we kept you in contact quite a bit.
how about Larry too?
Oh, yeah, how long were you?
I left, you and I came at the same time, so it was over a year.
No, I made it, you didn't.
Not the first round.
Maybe you and
You know what?
maybe you and Ms.
I-
McCarthy should have
I
a
really
discussion
don't have a
afterwards.
reply for that. Thank you for bringing it up.
So sharp, you didn't even feel the wound.
All right, on that note, any further discussion? All those in favor?
Oh,
Aye.
I
I guess I lost just to the vote.
What?
Never mind.
Opposed?
I was just
Abstain?
saying this.
Oh, okay. 601. Now we come to the grand, officer elections for fiscal year 2013. Mr. Trudell,
We do not require seconds on these, correct? It's just a nomination.
just a nomination.
I'd like to nominate Donna Brown, Chair of the Finance Committee for next year.
Brock's name for the nomination. Anyone else? Seeing no other names. Just had a mental moment. Any motion for, oh,
No, you already got that.
by acclamation. All right, for Mrs. Bronk as chair. Make a motion?
Motion,
I'll make a motion.
Yes.
I'll make a motion.
Oh, we have a motion already. I'm
Okay,
sorry.
that's all.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
You're way too giddy tonight.
No, actually, no, I'm not. Take that back. We had a nomination. We needed a motion by acclamation. And Mr. McDonald and Mr. Trudell is the second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? 700. Vice Chair? Oh, I'm sorry, Mrs. Brock. Did you want to say something?
I wanted to say thank you, and I was getting ready to nominate someone for vice chair. I would like to nominate Mr. Heath.
Thinking about it. Any other nominations? Seeing no other nominations, I need a motion Select by acclamation.
I'll make a motion.
Mr. McDonald, second by Mr. Trudell. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions, 700. For clerk,
Would I be out of line, Larry, to nominate you for clerk?
No, that's fine.
Thank you.
That's way down the list.
the clerk or sucker. You nominate
Yes.
Mr. McDonald.
You want some,
Any other nominations for clerk? No one else wants to try.
I make a motion that
Elect by acclamation. Second, Mr. Trudell. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? 700. All right, then,
May I point something out?
yes.
You've just seen that 3 members have failed the psychological test.
There we go. All right, once again, this has to go to the appointing authority, which meets tomorrow night at 6:30 in room.
Selectmen's reminder as well.
I honestly, I haven't looked to see where we can assign, I will
Okay.
email you, I'll have,
But it is posted, right?
it is posted, I will have, Janet send out a reminder in the morning.
All right, fine, thank you very much. So we'll meet tomorrow night, and the positions will be effective as of July 1st. That's why I get to sit tomorrow night. Fiscal 2013 budget matters. The selectmen's meeting last night. I hope everybody's aware that last night the override, which was required a simple majority, passed by a vote of 3-2. The debt exclusions, the debt exclusion on the bus failed by a vote of 3-2. It requires a supermajority. The repair of the high school gymnasium roof passed to be, these are all to put them on the ballot, passed 4-1. The Minot Forest School feasibility study passed 4-1. And the text and computers also passed 4-1. And the special election date was set for July 25th, which is a Wednesday. It's really important that everybody understands it's not a Tuesday, it's a Wednesday. One of the questions, July 25th. One of the questions that did come up last night was, there will be a cost to a special election. How much, in fact, how would that be paid for?
I guess we'll get a visit soon, find out.
Pardon?
I guess we'll be getting a visit soon.
Are we getting a visit? The special election, who's paying for it?
Special election is going to be paid by the town clerk's budget for 2013. The billing will be as of July 1st. In the billing for the town clerk in her budget, she has budgeted for 3 elections. So as of right now, we will not have to go to reserve. If we were
It appears-
going to get billed before July 1st, clerk, board of selectmen will have come before you.
Cool.
All right, so it appears we will not be billed.
Definitely not be billed this time.
Sorry about the meeting last night. As far as our meeting, we did post because there were 5 of us there. However, 5 of us weren't in any one single room, so we didn't have to convene. All right, it was obviously an overflow crowd last night. I want to thank those members who did come in support of the school committee. I think it's important to note that on the overrides, the only one failed was the one that was the financing method for the town, not for the school. Even though it was their buses, it was really a town issue, and the school issues did pass. Mr. Gray?
I have a minor question. Was that supposed to be a joint meeting?
No, it wasn't a joint meeting. The problem that exists is that anytime 5 of us get together, if we say anything to each other on any subject that's there, then technically under the law, we have in fact, violated the law because we've deliberated on something. So the practice, just to be on the safe side, is to post the meeting. And then if you and I happen to say something and 3 other people are sitting there, whether they hear us or not, nobody can tell. But if they've heard us, we've deliberated. All right? So to be on the safe side, we post those things. Joint meetings are advertised as joint meetings.
Okay.
Okay. But last night was not scheduled, and same thing for the school committee, they were there to support their two representatives, all right, but they weren't really there to meet in any other way. But with the majority comes, could be a problem. Mrs. Brown?
Mr. Chair, I just wanted to say that I was extremely disappointed in, the selectmen not even addressing the possibility of relocating for all the people there. I thought that was not the right thing to do. They should have addressed it. They just let it go. As they ignored it, and I thought that was not the right thing to do.
Any other comments?
Beg your pardon?
Any other comments?
I would
Mr.
I
Gray?
would certainly agree with that remark. I wasn't able to get inside the room, so I finally left. I think that was not the correct way to hold a meeting, that sort of thing.
Mr. McDonald, you seem
No, I'm trying hard not to say anything, so.
trying hard not to say anything? Well, I obviously stated my opinion last night when I went up for the public participation. I did it on behalf of the committee.
Yes, you did.
All right, because I knew everybody wanted to say something, but we've always agreed that we would speak with one voice, and I couldn't get us in one spot, so I could take a vote, because if I should go up and say something. I would have been far more comfortable if the public as well had all been able to sit on it. I realize there's some problems there, you lose the ability to televise, but I've also found in the past that when you move from location A to location B, a lot of people who are at home will get in their cars to drive in to see what's happening. I would like to have seen that as well, so that we could have seen, the strength that was out there, that people, a lot of people wanted to see it on the ballot. I don't think that everybody in the room last night wanted to support it, but they wanted to at least have the opportunity to express their opinion at some point before the final decisions were made. So, Mr. McDonald, you get your finger up there
Yes,
usually.
I do. I disagree. There was an opportunity to move that meeting because far in advance, I'm sure, it doesn't take a rocket science to know that's gonna be a packed meeting. So in order to move it to televise it, there were several opportunities beforehand to make arrangements, move it, and do it that way. So I'm not gonna let them off the hook that easy. They knew in advance it was gonna be a packed house, and if it wasn't, sorry, but at least you prepared accordingly, which is what we expect of our leaders, is to prepare and do the right thing. So, I'm sorry. That's all I have to say.
You're sorry. Anyone else have any comments? Mrs. Cthulhu?
Well, I wasn't there, so I'm not going to comment on that. I'm just surprised that the only one that failed was the bus situation. Any thought or ideas of solution to the problem, since that was not an option?
As far as what's gonna happen with the buses?
Yeah.
My understanding, well, Mr. Gray, why don't you, since you had a liaison meeting in the school today, and Dr. Rabinovitz is not bashful about saying that he's going to implement the program he's already mentioned publicly before, so.
You can correct me if I
Yes.
misstate it, but I think the intention is that a reduced number of buses would be put into service, only 12 of the 22, I think, that are now in service. And that they would not be busing the 9th through the 12th grade. And that they would also change the hours of the elementary schools, elementary and middle school, so that they would have pickup at different times. In other words, different classes, at staggered times. And that's the way he's gonna be looking at it, because he says he cannot go forward in a deficit position for the schools, he was forced to go that route.
No charging? They're not gonna,
He didn't say today, but that has come up.
I
The school
don't-
committee
it
has
didn't-
discussed it.
It wasn't mentioned, Tom, but he didn't either say yay or nay.
Right, not in today's meeting, but the last ad hoc meeting they had, they said if they went to this program, they probably would have to put in a user fee for anybody beyond a mile and a half, I think it was. I'm sorry, under a mile and a half, under a mile and a half.
The previous plan was not, didn't start at ninth grade, I believe it started at middle school.
Eighth.
It was at the
Yeah,
middle
it
school,
started
but
at
he's
eighth.
saying now it'll be 9 through 12.
Okay.
Like you said, today, he didn't say anything about charging, but I don't think they're totally finalized. He did tell us that they'll be making, at their next meeting, he will be bringing a formal proposal to the school committee.
I think that's fair, that his plans were not in concrete.
Right, no, they're not.
For details, but that's his general position.
So we'll hear it when he finally presents it.
So there will be no busing at all from 9 on out? So all those kids that don't really wanna go to school anyway, have now got a really darn excuse to not show up. Not only that, but I don't wanna drive anywhere in their neighborhood, at the beginning of school time and when school is released. Bad enough to get down Route 6 with the buses and a crossing guard out there. Can you imagine all of those cars with people dropping off and picking up? It's gonna be a nightmare. So, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Williams?
what would you do? If you didn't have the money, what would you do?
So they don't have the money to buy buses? Well,
That's
first
right.
off, charging isn't going to help them in any way, shape, or form, because it isn't going to give them any more buses to pick up the kids that they've already got to drive by anyway. So I can't see charging is gonna make any sense whatsoever, okay? And I have been a full advocate into leasing out the program to an outside agency right from the start, because we need to get out of the transportation business.
I thought the issue was that the revenue, the money is not there to support it either way, and the outside contractor was a more expensive option. Am I wrong?
The money is not there to buy new buses, okay? But for what we're paying to maintain the bus service we have, along with the benefits to the employees and all of that going on with it, we can afford an outside contract.
The sale of the buses we own.
Please.
Oh, sorry.
Mr.
That was
Scott,
the report he had given to us.
Hi,
Okay,
Mr.
I'm out
Trudeau?
of the loop on that item.
Mr. Trudeau?
Capital planning was in on the buses 2+ years ago. We are exactly where we were 2+ years ago. School side holds out that they can do it cheaper. Well, we're in a position where most of our buses are marginal. If we go at this, we'll be like 5 buses a year for the rest of our lives. I too have been a proponent of farm it out. You know how much money that you're gonna cost you every single year. It's a defined amount coming up. It's what you have to take out of your budget, period. End of discussion. No argument whether we get buses, we don't get buses, you know, which ones do we trade, do we repair? Are we repairing in a facility that's not OSHA safe?
Focus is on education.
Gets yourself down to the bottom line. But I say, 2+ years, absolutely no progress. It is amazing and discouraging.
Mrs. Brown?
I hear the frustration, but I kind of disagree a bit with that concept, because there has been 2 complete studies done on busing versus non-busing, and it is cheaper, according to these studies, to make, it's considerably cheaper to, cost effective, to do our own transportation. And the other thing is, once they have your contract, you have no control, you're stuck. You can't, it's a huge process to get back into the bus business again. It's not a huge process to get out of it. And I think if the board would indulge me just for 1 second, and Mrs., Madam Moderator she knows those 2 studies that I think she was on one of the studies, and that she could enlighten us that is the fact. Recently their studies have been a bit of a cluster, but I think, am I correct in saying that there was 2 studies done?
I believe there were, I didn't sit on it, but I
Oh.
do believe there have been 2 complete studies.
And the results?
I believe that they have determined that it was less expensive
Yes.
to keep it.
So I think, you should really, probably have a really, really good hard look at this, but I think that I'm real disappointed that 2 people in the town of Wareham made the decision that the voters couldn't have that opportunity to go out and vote. I think that's so wrong.
Mr. Slater, did you wish to answer Mrs. Brock's question on the studies?
What was the question?
On the studies, whether there was 2 studies or,
There was 2 studies,
I saw you signals on.
no, there were 2 studies, actually, besides the 2 studies in capital planning, did their work. We always question whether it's better to farm it out or keep it in house, because you're taking assets away from education, to run the system. But the bottom line is, it's approximately anywhere from $500,000 to $300,000 cheaper when you put all the costs in and compare apples to apples. The problem we have is, on the town side, is if you farm out to a leasing company, the bids are 2.2 to 2.5 million. We don't have the money to cover it.
Exactly.
So if we would have wanted to go out for leasing right now, there's no money for it.
I'd also like to expand that a little too, that the busing is a town expense, not a school
It's the
expense.
town on that spending.
All right, so the town doesn't have the money, it's not that the schools don't have the money. Mr. Camarado?
But, now, as Donald said, there was a couple studies done, but when you have a plan that says that it's a good plan and that it's gonna be cheaper, you have to adhere to that plan. Obviously, if it's cheaper and better for us to be in that business, we wouldn't be in the position we are today. So obviously, we're not sticking to the plan properly to run it effectively, or it wouldn't work. Now, the question I have, as far as Mr. Slater said, the money was, if we sold those 22 buses, I don't know what money, revenue that would bring in. I don't know, Mr. Grano?
That came up at our meeting today, and since those buses are, they're ancient, they're 12, some of them are even longer than that, I think 14 years.
12 to 14 years.
Basically, they would be junk value.
Really?
Scrap value.
Do you have an estimate value of the 22 bus fleet?
I don't, but I asked, how much could we get for the buses that aren't going to be used?
I would thought maybe that might be enough down payment to get us going, but maybe I'm wrong. Okay.
Currently not, no, I obviously haven't looked into it, but that was
Brought up, okay.
brought up.
Mr. McDonald?
You're right about one thing, maybe it's not so much ran properly, but it hasn't been funded properly from the standpoint that they haven't bought buses in forever, and when they did, they had to, as we know, there was quite a, so the program hasn't been run properly, but a reasonable finance guy, I'm not even talking about a really good finance guy, can sit down and do something that makes sense. And it doesn't necessarily have to be all farmed out or all bought. I mean, there's hybrids that you can do as well. There's several different ways, but the reality here is this has nothing to do with which plan we choose. This has to do with people butting heads over who wants to be in control of it. That's really what it's coming down to, because as he said, this is 2 years down the road and no progress has been made. That's because one side says this way, one side says that way, and nobody wants to,
You feel that's true and not a financial reason? I don't buy it. I don't buy it.
agree.
Really?
I'm a halfway decent financial guy. I bet you I can come up with a plan right now that would work with the money we have. We would have to put in some capital if we did it one way, we may not the other way, but there are so many options. It's not just one or the other. You can have hybrid systems. The bus drivers, and I may not be positive about this, but I believe most of the drivers are part-time. They have no benefits. You realize that? So you're gonna go out to a company that not only has to pay benefits, but probably has other things they have to pay there. So you're already, you know, and then maybe there's some logistics issues. There's a million things to look at in this. It's not as simple as, well, we're just gonna get 25 buses and start rolling, or we're just gonna go out and let you guys handle it because you have special needs children. You have a lot of things that you have to consider. You need a guy that understands numbers.
I understand all that, okay, but you still really feel that we should be in the transportation business?
No, I didn't
don't.
say that. What I said is,
Through the chair. He's coming
Sorry.
through the chair, please go through the chair.
I don't, I think that it should be just, as Dave said, a number, that's what it costs us, work from there. I don't think we have the manpower or the knowledge to be in the transportation business, period.
okay, well.
Just an opinion, that's my
And
opinion, I want
again,
record with that.
But you and I are arguing over air right now,
Okay.
because no one's ever put a financial package in front of us with more than one option or the other option. Nobody ever sat down and looked at this.
Yes, they did.
No.
So you never looked at, so we've looked at hybrid programs, and were they not?
Not, well, not quite a hybrid,
All right,
but
so,
we've seen different ones. Mrs. Brock?
I really feel that the past is kind of behind us right now, and I do feel that when we went to town meeting, it was always the school against the town, and I just feel that it's not gonna be that way anymore. I think we've come a long way, and we're all, maybe it's because the recession has done it to everyone. I think people are looking at things differently, and I think that the selectmen, I'll have to give them a little kudos here. I think the majority of them are working toward that one united. And I think it's always been a constant battle. And the plan's been in effect. But the school always comes up short when it comes to the buses. I mean, there are so many things that are in the charter or in the bylaws that the town hasn't been doing. So that, you know, you can have the plan, and we do have a plan, but they just haven't been following it. And
Mr. Gray?
I do think, one thing I would report on is I believe the school committee has done a pretty detailed analysis on this. I have not looked it over, so I cannot comment, but I think whether it's the capital planning or the school committee, but I think the analysis has been done. But I think, as Alan points out, one of the problems is that even if you decided, yes, you wanted to go with an outside firm, right at the moment, we've got a slight problem. We don't have the money to do it.
Mr. Colorado, did you?
No,
Mr. Sherbat?
To that point.
Get the edge.
So if we don't have the money to go out to an outside contractor, which might be some $500,000 more, and we're not following the plan now to replace buses, what's the difference?
It would be nice to have some sort of a plan, excuse me.
Yes, answer the question, Mr.
I'll hold you back.
There's a lot of emotion in here right now, so that's why you're taking
It seems to me that, you know, you've got to have some sort of a plan, and it's got to be worked in the budget. But unfortunately, at the moment, we have a budget that's been passed, and there is certainly no $2 million sitting inside of it that you can pull out of it. But I think what people have been trying to do is to have some group, ad hoc committee, for example, who is going to try and put together a plan which we could then follow. But as you well know, that ad hoc committee didn't get to first base. So, what has happened is nothing's been done. The buses have grown over until you've got a oncoming safety problem. And, you know, I think at the moment, the proposal that we heard from the school department today is probably But the only way that it can be done, because you don't have enough money to go outside, and you don't have enough money to buy the buses. And the only thing that can change is if a committee was formed that could make a decision and make a plan. But I haven't seen that happen. I hope that it does.
Mrs. Cthulhu?
I would greatly question any study that was so skewed as I have seen in the past, okay? I don't even believe it because of the fact that when I was first on this FinCon, I was shown the original study of why they decided they were gonna go into the transportation business in the first place. But they didn't follow the plan, they didn't replace the buses along the way. So of course it's cheaper to run a program when you don't replace the capital, okay? Dr. Rubin actually handed me the study when I said, did you do the study on doing an outside service? And he handed it to me, and it was $2.5 million a year, okay, for an outside contractor. It has always seemed like they didn't want to, the school department didn't want to give up the vehicles that they had for special education, situations like that, the athletic bus, they want to run their own program for that. I can understand that. And there's no reason, and even Dr. Rubin said so, there's no reason why they couldn't supplement that with their own equipment, okay? But nobody seems to want to give or take on the issue. And I feel really disappointed that the committees that were formed to try to get this resolved have just fallen flat on their face.
Couldn't agree more.
And if it is a town responsibility, and it is financially a town responsibility, then it should be presented to the citizens of the town of Wareham to decide whether they want their children bused or they don't. I think children have enough on their plate just to survive. And adding this additional problem to the high school kids and the parents of those high school kids is going to cause immense problems with the absentee rates and other issues going on. I just felt that I feel as though a plan should have been presented. These are your two options. We either buy these buses every 5 years, 5 buses every year in perpetuity, or we commit the town to $2.5 million a year, or maybe less if we kept part of the program ourselves, and present it to the voters of the town of Wareham on a ballot and let them decide.
That's what they're trying to do.
Though that committee got fly in its face, they presented nothing.
Any other conversation?
I agree with her, just want to say that.
Sorry, I had to get that off my chest. Last time.
Mrs. McCarthy would like to say anything. What's the committee's pleasure? Mr. Worthing?
I have a question. Given that approach, are you saying that you want to maintain the same level of services currently being?
I think our children deserve that, yes, I do.
Mrs. McCarthy, does the committee wish to let Mrs. McCarthy speak?
Oh, fine.
Fine.
All right, Ms. McCarthy, our practice is, though, you must speak to the facts, please not opinions.
Of course.
Okay, no, I'm just saying, that's what we generally do.
Of course.
Could you please step up? Oh, sorry, we usually ask you. What?
Get ready to go something.
No, I dropped my.
Just wanted to say a couple of things. Number one of the things that I hear that keeps getting overlooked with the idea of outsourcing is that the comment is frequently made that then we're out of the transportation business, that's it. It's not entirely the case. According to state law, the school system is still required to have a transportation director. In other words, outsourcing doesn't relieve the school of all responsibility. Somebody within the school system, might be the transportation director, still has to be responsible for establishing the routes, for being the liaison between the two organizations. So that's another expense, as well as to realize that these transportation companies are not in it as nonprofit entities. They need to make a profit too. So, you know, whatever they charge is going to be above and beyond what you would normally expect them to pay. What I was going to interject was simply then also a question of, has anybody approached GATRA to see whether it would be something that they would consider to add a few extra routes, morning and afternoon? Provide, granted, it may not be door-to-door service like the current school bus, but for the high schoolers, that would be fine. If there were certain pickup points that they had to get to, and then the bus would bring them, and pay 50 cents or $1 a day, whatever the GATRA fee is. It's really, really cheap compared to what you pay in Boston. I know in Boston, the kids take public transportation to school. So there's an alternative suggestion that would relieve the town from some of the pressure of making a decision by September, et cetera, and might help to ease the burden on the town with this transportation. GATRA might be happy for the extra business. So,
Can I jump in Dick's seat to answer that?
What? You tell the Dixie to answer that, please?
Well, we know Dick is a great person, advocate of public transportation, mind you, so. Right.
Any other comments?
I think we needed the bill.
Well, not quite. The ad hoc committee did meet, and during the course of the ad hoc committee meeting, as usual, the finance committee was always represented at their meetings in person. All right, Mr. Sweat went through in great detail, brought the depreciation costs in, et cetera. There was some discussion about some other expenses could have been a little higher or whatever, but I have to honestly say I agree with Mr. Sweat. There was nothing materially that could be adjusted that would change the situation of saying that we were better off buying buses that would have a 10-year service life, paying for them in 5 years, as long as they were properly maintained and limited at the start, limited to the large buses, because that's where the major problem is. The sped buses tend to be younger, and of course, as we said, the 5-year replacement. And if you feel, if the bus will last 10 years, and every year you're doing 5, that's 50 buses. So the fleet is covered at that point. That's also the basis for the warrant article that was put up in the request for the debt exclusion, because it came down to $400,000 a year was the way to start the program. And then we would have old buses this year, and less old buses next year, less until we finally get into that rotation. All right, there is a clear savings at this point, and it is between $300,000 and $500,000. It is highly contingent upon our drivers. If our drivers are full-time and full benefits, and it's very expensive, we might as well go out and rent it at that point. So if you look at it, from the point of view from the educator, it'd be nice to walk away from it, get out of it. Hey, all you have to do is pay attention to, to educating the children. Only one problem. It's a money issue too. And the school committee has tried to be sensitive to the town situation, because they're also coming to us looking for money for the schools, and they've been strapped tight on there. Well, they don't want to put the money into buses per se, and they understand the town's problem. So that's why they, I have to say, Jeff put a lot of time and effort into that analysis. It's been going over by a few. It would have helped if he had done that analysis long ago, 2 years ago, right, David? It would have helped us a lot, but they didn't. But they finally came around, and they finally, did the proper way, and that was the basis. To start the program was that warrant article. Unfortunately, the final plan was never settled on, so there was no plan. So they were just asking for the money for 4 buses, I think it was in the end, with no plan, right? And I, for one, I'm not a supporter of that. If they had brought the plan that they actually had, right, and had discussed, and could have come to agreement to present it, it is a good plan. It could work. The problem is now, if they go back and said, okay, we are going to do that plan, it's going to be a year older. The buses are going to be a year older. It's going to be that much harder as time goes by. What we face now is based on the age of those buses. We're probably going to have breakdowns over the course of the winter. We're going to have emergency replacements. And as we've heard, a new bus is $90,000 to $94,000 if we buy it outright. So we probably will find ourselves in probably a leasing situation that we don't want to be in, but it would be just a straight capital lease, because we won't be able to afford it. They're not going to be able to come to the FinCom and pick the money out of the reserve, because it's only $100,000 this year, one bus. So that's part of the problem as well. And personally, I would say the solution is, we have buses that are 14 years old, we wait 11 more years, we can go to the CPC and ask for them as historic preservation. They'll be antiques.
I love you, Frank.
Mr. McDonald.
Didn't we vote at the town meeting on the mills tax money, and in some form or fashion, that was going to be, well, of course, we took it away from just splitting it 50-50 between the school and the town, but I think that money at some point was also going to play into the equation.
Into capital.
Into capital planning, but there was no split between the two,
Right,
you just
it
can't
took
do
that,
it.
I remember that, that was the
Yeah.
amendment. to the
Right.
vote.
That had a life of its own too, because the original thing was to do 50-50
Right.
when the tax was passed, right? We found out that we could not do that, we had to first accept the tax. Then there was a second warrant article, right, which attempted to split it, and the conversation was, could we split it 50-50? And the answer was no. All right, we could put it all into capital, and then it could be split up accordingly. But we couldn't officially put, not officially, we couldn't put it into the charter that way. or
But that
into
may
the
be a
bylaws.
way, if it ever gets past that point, where we can actually use it.
You know, it's pocket to pocket, it's like the override, you know, the 780 the first year you can designate, who knows what's gonna happen the next year. All right, then the integrity of, like, the school committee and the finance board and the board of selectmen, that should keep the money where it's supposed to be.
One more quick thing.
Yeah.
Hopefully my memory is right. I remember reading one of these reports, something that around 70, the low 70% of the busing, the towns and cities in Massachusetts are sub out the busing. So why is Wareham, I'm pretty sure I'm right, why is Wareham always gonna be not a majority type of thing? That's what bothers me. 70-something% of all the towns and cities in Wareham, you know, sub out their busing. Why do we have to be different? I just wonder.
Well, actually, it's, we're one of 6 who are still maintaining our own buses.
Yeah, I know it was a different,
The other
very
side-
rare.
You know, here's the other piece to it, though. If you go to the state website and look at our average property tax bill compared to the rest of the state, we rank 317th out of about 328. So it's a money matter. It's all about money. It's all about what we can afford. And we can't afford to pay $2.5 million. Now, the solution that's out there now, first we're trying to save the school system. The other is if there had been prior overrides, which I'm not advocating, don't get me wrong in that. But the fact is, you have to have the money, and we haven't had the money.
I understand.
And it is the cheaper way. Now, others who have left, and I think Concord's the most recent one, right? They went over and they started leasing the buses, because they don't want to be bothered with the whole operation of trying to operate it. But what they have done is they've retained control of the buses. They're still buying the buses and supplying them to the company that's actually leasing them drivers. Why? For exactly what Mr. McDonald said. They think they may want to go back the other way. If they go to a leasing company and have to go out and buy a whole fleet, there's just no way they can ever go back. And that's what's happened to a lot of people.
Makes
And
sense.
part of it is that this is one of those times, we're not first in line, we're one of the last holdouts. But the holdout has always been financial. We don't have the funds that other towns have.
Well, if we're so good at running buses, why don't we just go and some of these other towns that are strapped, we'll just take over and compete and run their bus service as well.
And buy the buses.
Yeah, we'll be in the bus business.
Who voted for him? Mrs. Bronk.
I really and truly believe that the school department does not want to be in the busing business. And I think that they have, you know, they're there because of our current economic situation. It's truly a headache for them to run this department.
We ought to see what Wayne does and how we resolve the problem. If we don't have the money, we gotta operate within what the money we have, and then see where the pressure points are. But we don't know that this, what is being proposed is gonna fail. It's not gonna fail. People are gonna figure out how to do it.
Mrs. Controller?
Just if you could follow up, what Mr. McDonald had mentioned about that, money designated to capital expenditure. Kim, do we know the status of that in the legislation? Did we get that through? What was the
We never know. Mr. Slavin appears to have an answer or is willing to answer it.
You know, the
Alan?
status, honey?
Yeah.
What's the status? Is it? It's on someone's desk?
No, it's,
Reports, water pollution control.
I haven't talked to him yet. I spoke to him briefly. He was going to get with the, don't make that face at me. He was going to speak with the town accountant, and I don't believe he had a chance to do that at this point. So that's kind of where we're at. Are you marking my paper with that?
Yep,
So he's already spoken to this?
I already took the ad.
Did you already talk to him?
I already took the ad. Of course I've already talked to him, about 6 times. Everybody.
I know, but last time it was, we were waiting to hear what he was going to do with the new town accountant, what reports he could get.
We still stand at that point.
Well, then I'll update that further.
That is the next step, is to find out what reports, what information is available to him. All right, he's working on that. I'm supposed to try to meet with him next week to sort of see what we have. One of the things that's really encouraging is one of our selectmen, who attends all of our meetings, all right, is working with a guy in the University of Bridgewater, which is not Bridgewater, to try to get him an intern, hopefully somebody in cost accounting and understands processing flow. Plus, there's also some other areas that are potentials there. And the university is working very hard to develop relationships with the towns, and I hope for both of the selectmen and Mr. Campino, if this works out, because it looks really good. It has great potentials.
When are you gonna tell your daughter?
About what?
The baby.
I did what I was supposed to do.
Not to worry, the email has already been sent. He's not gonna get away.
You know what, we just had the same conclusion that
All
we
right,
had
school-
last time.
Liaison reports, school committee, anything further, Mr. Gregg, on the school?
I think we've exhausted that pretty well. I think that was all covered other than your discussion with him on China, which I don't think was a matter of.
He was talking to you, not me. I was sitting there saying, when's he gonna stop? When are the two of them gonna knock it off?
Which was
One of the things that came up today in the meeting, that liaison meeting though, was the impact that issuing potential layoff slips has. All right, now, even if the override passes, all right, and the money suddenly becomes available, people don't sit around waiting to be unemployed. And evidently, there's a number of school systems that are looking for qualified people. And we have qualified people, and the school systems are hungrily approaching them. And they in turn will probably be doing the same. My other concern of that would be is, since even if we pass the override, we'll still be up in the air, and there'll be the question of how many of them will say, well, I'm willing to gamble another year. Because some of the people that are being laid off are not necessarily the youngest people. Right? We have some teachers with over 10 years worth of experience that are on the list. Even if the override passes, there are some administrative positions that were let go that will not be replaced. All right, Mr. Gray?
Just to add to that, I think he said none of the administrative positions would be
Pardon?
replaced. He said none of the
Right,
administration
that they would not be
would be
replaced.
replaced, even if there was an override. He also said that one of the problems with the, what is it, 22? How many were laid off?
21.
21 were laid off, was that not only are some of those teachers being approached by other towns, but they're also being approached with higher salaries because we're fairly much at the low man on the totem pole, so the chances of losing the good ones are pretty good.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
How many administrative positions have been?
I don't think there were that many that were on that list, but I don't.
The original plan called for 6 positions that were not actually in the classroom,
Okay.
okay? And you have to be careful on some of these administrative positions too, because, I mean, we're getting by in some of those positions with one person, where most school systems have 2 or 3.
Mm-hmm.
So it has, you know, I understand some people are sensitive to certain salaries, et cetera, but when you look at the work and the programs that they're responsible for, they are, in fact, we're getting away pretty cheap on some of this stuff. Okay, that is part of the problem.
You had the discussion on the curriculum director.
Yes, and
That was
the
a
discussion
part.
on the curriculum directors, we have one curriculum director. In most school systems, you have one for English arts, one for the math and science,
also
and one for the
different
elementary, right? Then you have several, you know, the problem on the curriculum is you have to coordinate K through 12. And we're trying to take one person and have them coordinate K through 12 in all aspects of the education.
Absolutely.
Right, where typically what the system would do is to say, okay, we'll have an English curriculum coordinator who will do K through 12, math K through 12. And this is the continuity, so when you leave you leave the 8th grade and go into the 9th grade, all 9th grade students should be at the same level when they get to the high school. All right, what's happened recently too is we've had some breaks in that, because the curriculum director is overextended. All right, we're finding that in some cases there's breaks. The 8th is not ready to go into the 9th, and we're having to play catch up. And that hurts your scores when you go down the road. Mr. Worthing, no?
Two questions. In 2010, didn't we get some federal money to bail out the teacher cuts?
Teacher jobs.
How much was that?
Well, we wound up using it over 2 years, about $400,000. It was 400 plus, but that's gone. All right, so now the problem is now.
Bad planning.
Well, it wasn't bad planning, it was, it's $400,000 that was used to affect the lives of the children that were in the system at that time. All right, then 2 years later, the money disappeared, and it impacts the children that are in there now. All right, one positively, one negatively. That's the only problem with the federal and state monies, when they pull them, right? I mean, when they say you use it for this, or you don't get it, well, best to use it, isn't it? The only problem is, 2 years later, you're gonna be denying somebody else the advantage that those kids had, unless you can come up with the money. We haven't been able to come up with the money.
And the other thing is, from a curriculum point of view, is it possible to have an English curriculum person for more than one community? And a math one for more than one community?
You're discussing regionalization, and that's another whole subject. That's another whole subject. The state is starting to try to encourage regionalization, all right, but there's lots and lots and lots of factors that have to be conquered. It's a very big issue on the Cape, because they have very small populations of school children, et cetera, and they've had tough experiences trying to do it, trying to bring it together. This came around?
All right, yeah, boss, I'll be the bad guy, okay? You ready? Okay. If the school committee can lay off 22 teachers and still feel that they can run the school department adequately, I'm not saying that they don't want more teachers, but obviously some thought went into laying off these 22 people, and they feel that they can run the school committee, the school department the way they should. Doesn't that tell us that there's too much fat there?
Mr. Gray?
I can tell you what your answer would definitely be. They do not feel they can run it adequately, but they have no money. So they
Excuse me, through you, Frank, but they are gonna run it with that many people.
Of course.
Oh, no, that's it. It can be run with that many people. That's the end of my question.
Of course.
No.
You could.
Sorry.
Sorry.
Sam, go ahead.
You can, well, obviously, you can run it with 150 students to a class if you want. You can run it that way. How good the education will be is another question altogether. Yes.
Please.
But I think to answer your question, I think the school committee, in fact, I know the school superintendent would comment, I cannot run it what I feel is adequate. And I'm sure that the education will suffer. But yes, he'll run it best he can.
Mrs. Brock?
I strongly disagree with you, because it's not like it used to be. You've got children, the state has mandated all these programs that we have legally have to abide by and do. Number one. Number two, you've got a whole new generation of drug-dependent children that are out there that are taking up so many more resources from our school systems. And number three is you've got, where you do have two parents in the household, they're working, just trying to eat. It's a whole different ballgame. It's a whole different set of problems. These kids, it is.
Mr. Trudell?
The reality, Doug, is that as a community, if I step back, we're eating our own lunch. I look at the school system from a capital planning point of view. They need to put in a wireless communication systems in all the schools. They don't have the resources to do that, nor do they have the resources to hire somebody full-time to do that. So they're surviving. But if you look at the town as a whole, Jeff said any money that the school's gotten from increase in the state has been consumed by healthcare. That'd be true. But as a community, we're going through this healthcare holiday, we Peter to pay Paul, we juggled everything. We're running out of juggle room. And that's on both sides of the equation. We're not doing it as a capital plan, that's a joke, because of the fact that we just watch the buildings deteriorate, we watch our rolling stock deteriorate, and you only do something when it absolutely becomes a safety issue that could harm employees. It is systemic to the town, and it's not going to get better. It's not going to get better for the schools. It's just, we've never been able to sit down and say, here's how we project a 5-year plan, and it doesn't look good. Here's selectmen, what do you think we ought to do about this? Because there is no plan.
Mr. Kellogg?
Through you, Frank, that's my point, okay? We have to run it the way we have to run it right now. Times will get better, hopefully times will get better, and the school committee will have to learn that this is all they have right now, so they have to make it the best they can, give the students the best they can for what we have. It's just gonna have to go forward. Now, I'm gonna put it in very simple terms, okay? Maybe I'm just a simple person. If you only have $100 to live on a month, you can't spend 120. I want to spend 140. I can only spend 100. I have to live within my means and do the best I can within my means. Now, obviously, they're going to have to give people more than one job. There has to be, what I'm saying is, this is all we have. We have to make it work. Now, if they cut 22 teachers, obviously, Dr. Vinovich has a plan in his mind that he can get this done. He doesn't want to do it that way. I don't want to do it that way either. But it has to be done right now. I'm sorry, we have no other option, and it has to be done that way. So get everyone, Dr. Vinovich and all those people in charge here, to get it done the best he can right at the moment with the money he has. There is no other options. So that's the way it has to be. And you can say, Larry, excuse me, through you, Frank, you can say your child needs more, my child needs more, everybody needs more. There is no more. It's dry. So let's just get it done with what we have. Maybe next year there'll be state funds, there'll be federal funds, but right now this year, let's everyone stop crying about we don't have any money. Work together to get it done, and let's see what the future brings. But crying about it and blaming everybody about it, that's not gonna work, guys. So let's just do it, right? I'm sorry, that's just all there is.
Well, what do you do with the federal and state mandates? How
We're gonna have to get them done. Excuse me, gotta get them done. Okay? They have to get them done. Don't know if there's a teacher there that has to do 2 or 3 things. If she wants that job, wants to live in this town, wants to keep that job, she's gonna have to get that done. There are some people who can't move on and go to other places and has the option, I'll move to Concord, I'll make more money. Their roots are here. They're going to stay here, and if they have any type of decency, they're going to want to work for their children and not worry about the almighty dollar. Because the almighty dollar right now in Wareham has stopped. Okay? I wish there was millions, and I wish you could have 100 more teachers, but we cannot. So let's stop crying about it and just let Dr. Vinovich cut these people, do the best he can, and worry about next year. There is no other option. Everyone can talk about it all they want. And I hate to be the bad guy to say it, but that's the only situation we're in right now, so let's just keep it the way it is and move on. Right.
Mr. McDonald?
Wow. No doubt in my mind, you're right.
Okay.
That's all the money we have. However, if you take the money we have and suddenly that $100 you were living off of and that's all you got, well, now you got 80. Because now you're gonna have to live off 80. Now you got 60, because we're going in the reverse here. We're not getting more money, we're getting less money. Wait, I'm not done. If you take a look at our school system, and not everybody's a perfect straight A student, and not everybody's a failure, but we had 2 alternative schools at one time, which a lot of towns don't have 2 alternative schools. In a town this size, we were putting a large majority of money into special needs, where a lot of towns our size don't have to do that. So now, the cost for educating a child that's not in special needs, well, they're going to suffer too as well, because this is what we have. You're right, this is what we have, this is how the money was. So instead, the state, which has
not use the formula correctly, that's something, I don't wanna whine about it, but somebody's gonna, that has to be addressed, and I think it is being addressed, that we're not getting the proper amount of money that we should be getting from the state, because the formula's not being followed. That's something that needs to be followed, we'll get more money. There are other avenues, but you know what, we can't just sit around and wait for it to get better. We have to have a plan for it to get better. And no offense, but the more you go into it, I'm not gonna argue with you about this, but there are 50 kids already probably waiting to go to another school system, living in this town because of, I guess, some sort of rule, and I'm not sure, someone's gonna have to explain it to me, that they can make a choice to go to Old Rochester or other schools. That costs us money when they go over there. So, we're not just, you know, this is all we got, we're losing money. So we have to do something to prop up our education system. So first off, we can gain some more money. And second off is, no offense, but, you know, that's the future here. If we don't do something about it, I don't want to say, hey, this is it, this is all you got. Well, you know what? That's not good enough for me.
To you, Frank, can I answer?
Yes.
Reluctantly.
No, go ahead.
No. Okay, I agree, okay. So let's try to find a plan that's gonna make next year better. You're talking about next year. No one can predict the future. No one knows what the state's gonna do. No one's gonna do what the federal's gonna do. I'm talking about this year. Basically, this year is etched in stone.
No, it's not.
No, it's not.
It's not.
No.
You don't feel that they're.
Because of the override, it's not etched in stone.
Okay.
Okay. Now, let me interrupt.
Yes, go ahead. No, I want to hear it. Thank you.
Because one of the things we heard today was, you know, we come from a generation where classrooms were organized much differently, right? Basically, we're organized by the capabilities of the students. And the kids at the higher levels, you could have larger classrooms, no problems, et cetera. Right? Class sizes of 28 to 30 were not uncommon. However, right, today when you go in, look at the mixture of what we had when we went to school, and we'll look what there is today. First off, you cannot segregate out by capabilities. It must be homogeneous. And they are carrying not only the regular students, they are also carrying ones with physical disabilities in the same classroom. And also with learning disabilities. So that teacher is not just, they may be sitting in there with 30 kids, right? But actually, because of these other problems, ADD and everything else, it's more like they have 40 or 45 kids. It's time-wise, how much, and then how much can the teacher dedicate to each student, et cetera, as needed. One of the things the state did a few years back is they put a testing system in that says, you know what, we're going to measure you. You can live within your means and do whatever you think, but guess what? We're going to test how well you're doing that. So then we go in, we've got this classroom with a teacher with a heavy burden, right? Who the state is going to come in and give the MCAS test and say, Wareham, you're not doing the job. This is going to impact you in the following ways, down to the point where you reach like New Bedford, where they walk in and say, we have the school system now. Right, and it's not our money that's going to pay for it. Okay, that's not the road we want to go anywhere near. What you're seeing with the layoff of the 21 teachers, the 6 additional people, et cetera, is the school system trying to live within its means. As you said, we have $100, right? Well, we also have the option whether or not to go out and get a part-time job. They have no option. They have $100 and no other way to generate money other than to request the debt exclusions or the overrides, or to request money from the town. That's all they can do. Right? The other problem that we run into is our system degrades. People, as Larry said, start looking for other systems. We heard a statistic today that blew our socks off. Right? In our junior high school, or our middle school, as they call it here in Massachusetts, right? The honor roll is approximately 22%, 20 to 22%. Upper Cape Technical just accepted 78 Wareham middle school students. 55 of those are honor roll. 2/3 are honor roll. That's leaving our system. Okay? And now look at that classroom of 30 and say, guess what? That top tier that would make it easier is gone. Is gone. And what we're left with is kids who probably need education even more than the ones who are leaving. They need the break. They need the additional attention, right? And we don't have really the right educational environment for them. I think probably the greatest eye-opener here would be to go over to the alternative school, where we have all the trouble kids right now. That's the one group they have separated. You go into that building, right, and see what's going on there, and suddenly you say, wait a minute. This is social responsibility. And I'm not, no, you'll take a look at it and you'll think.
That back up, because I'm gonna give you a statistic, through you, I'm gonna give you a statistic. That alternative school, okay? How many people, how many children do you think actually make it out of that alternative school and succeed and go on? All I'm telling you is I feel that the alternative schools in this town and every town in the state is a waste of time and money. And I just don't, those kids are so troubled, you couldn't help with $1 million per student. That's just how I feel.
So then the question becomes, do we or don't we abandon them?
I would.
It doesn't matter.
I'm as cold as they come, I understand that. But say we don't get the override. If we don't get the override, going back to my $100, if the overrides fail, my question stays the same. We have to do what we have to do. Hopefully the overrides would pass. And you know what? I'm going to vote for them.
Yes, we have to do what we have to do, but the problem is will we get the results that we're expected to get by the state?
Well,
And remember, we also passed the question on the debt exclusion for 2 new curriculums that are being mandated by the state and federal governments with no funds. A mathematics curriculum at the high school level, which goes back 30, 40 years, let me tell you. All right, so, they're turning the clock back and getting back into the tougher stuff. And then also, the other program is elementary literacy. And I'll tell you what, you don't learn how to read by the 4th grade, you have a lifelong problem. So I understand why the Fed and state are pushing it. I just wish they put some money out there. Our problem is we're expected to come up with the money. Mr. Trudell, get me out of this.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, I am opposed to 2.5 because next year.
I didn't hear what you said.
I'm opposed to 2.5 because
Okay.
next year the town will be here looking for 2.5. This is a very small, we're starting now with debt exclusions and 2.5s. However, I was always of the impression that we paid children to go to school. I pay taxes to the town pays teachers, town puts up schools. In essence, I'm paying children a salary through my taxes to get an education. And even though the school loves to brag that 95% are accepted at college, the reality is for many students, many youngsters, they hit 12th grade. They may take a bout at college, but high school is where they either got it or they didn't. And so we're hoping that they come out of high school with the skill sets that will allow them to move up. And we need to give them the very best we can because we as a society live with those next 40-some years of what we did on the front end. And ugly as the situation is, we owe it to the children to give it the best shot. Your approach
It brings up a subject, there have been a couple of pilot programs that are out there, including the iPad,
You
and
didn't get my point, did you?
I got your
Yeah,
point,
you did.
I got your point, but what I'm saying is that's not a discriminatory thing.
Oh, yes, it is. I was one of those kids who grew up and couldn't afford all those
I
clothes.
understand that.
Okay, that everybody else had.
What I'm saying is with the pilot programs, those would be provided. But the problem is, we don't have the infrastructure to support it. So we can't even get into a pilot part, you know, it's.
That was my point. Well, okay, that's really something we need, that we really need right now, to worry about paying for that. We can't pay for the books for the new math course. We don't need something down the line that half of the children in this town can't even afford.
That's not even what's being advocated. There was a pilot program, but that question was, on there was the fact would it be cheaper to do something electronically than to have it on paper? All right, the answer to that happens to be yes, but the problem is, like the buses, that initial
You don't have
upfront investment is so big, you can't afford it. Mr. Trudell, you wanted to?
I'll sit here quietly.
Are we all, Mr. Worthing?
I just don't think lack of money can be an excuse for our expectation that the program is gonna get better. And if we go around and just say, oh, we can't afford this, we can't afford this, and this is the reason why we're failing, that's not right.
I don't know if that's the case. I think what it is, you know,
But I mean, the
there are
expectation
physical-
still has to be that we're,
expectations always have to be high. I don't think anybody will debate that expectation should always be high. And I also am one of those kids in the family who afforded nothing, but the expectations were high. And that's what my peers, also in my classroom, they've all been very successful, and it was the expectations, not the money. Mr. Gray?
Just to set the record straight, there seemed to be some question as to whether the school department was moving ahead on the basis of this is how much money we got and we're gonna try and do the job as well as we can with that amount of money. I think that's their attitude. Obviously, they're also trying to get overrides in order to get more money, but that basically is not going to change the situation as it stands today. So they are proceeding on that basis.
Okay. Can we move on to capital planning? Anything from capital planning?
They haven't had a meeting?
Haven't had a meeting. Okay, capital planning seems to be in a state of slumber. The library,
There is an
anything?
opening in the finance committee for next year.
That's what I was gonna ask, did anybody volunteer?
Yes, Mr. Heath.
I didn't volunteer.
I second that.
Oh, you passed.
I didn't volunteer for anything. That's up to the chairman of the committee.
You're still the chairman.
I can't appoint next year.
July, Donna, you could make a decision.
I can't appoint next year, okay. Library, anything
I
from the
think I owe
library?
him.
I'm waiting on an update from Denise Maderos, because he brought up a point about their repair being finalized, and that is the case. On the other part, when it comes to spinning, I wanted a list of what exactly is preparing to become part of the system actually mean. So as soon as I get that, hopefully at our next meeting, I will give you a complete and utterly wonderful update.
Okay. Community events?
Don't
Do we have?
raise your hand.
Oh, you have something for the library?
Yeah, I
Okay.
don't know the Friends of the Library mailing list.
I have no idea. I'm just a liaison, and I don't even know how to spell
I
that.
believe you can do that by going to the website.
How did I end up?
Oh, how did you?
Library mailing list?
Oh, I have no idea.
You got a lot of money, that's
Did
why.
you do?
I was asked if I wanted to join, you know, $10 a year, et cetera.
I mean, it wasn't to incurrent resident, it was just, yeah, I'm just curious how I wound up on that mailing list.
We didn't.
David did it to you, he said he volunteered.
All right, I'm losing
Or did they
control.
buy a board?
Well, I'm losing control here. You know, I'm sorry. Next time I won't put your name down. Mr. Worthing, did you have something? Or-
no, it is.
No? Community events, do you have anything?
We haven't had any, last time I talked to you guys.
Okay, Tom, do you have any
I
special
you know what, I have
services?
one statement on the services in Wareham that I'm involved in. We seem to be, well, I'm not sure if I brought this up last week, someone gave me an answer. We're applying for a new building department, building.
Building inspector. Right, building
Yes,
inspector.
okay. So we're applying for one, even though
We're posting.
we're posting. We have one whose contract run out. So that's standard procedure. We can't just hire the person we have. We have to put up a bid.
That was just to go for bid on renewal. Like
Even
that.
if
We
it's
talked
not-
about it last time.
Right, that's
Without
why I did bring that up.
without a renewal in the contract, and I'm not
Oh, I
sure.
already brought it up.
Normally, there would have to be a renewal in the contract, otherwise it has to go to rebid.
Okay. Does anyone know the
procurement.
exact procedure? Does the person who we have in place now, does that give him a leg up on any,
No.
on any other applicant? Are all applicants treated equal?
Yes, but he's actually considered, he's going to be considered.
I understand that, but I didn't know if that helped him where he was. Okay,
By human nature to some degree, but it's not supposed to.
okay. No, that's all I have. I really haven't had any meetings with them to do anything. I know that I did too with Miles Burke a while back, and he said when things slow down and they get their people in place, that he was looking to see if there was some fees and some increases that we could do to try to raise a little bit of revenue. We were gonna look at them closely, but right at the moment, nothing has been etched in stone.
Okay. Any other liaison reports? All right, new business, there is some new business. One is, the selectmen did send a letter to the DOR requesting a legal deficit payment to cover the 242 involved with the settlements. That means that our free cash will not be encumbered by that amount. It was the right thing to do. It was suggested by the Department of Revenue. The letter signed is out there. We talked about it last week, if you remember right, so we will not be double hit. Okay, that's been taken. It's around 240,000 in total. I also received a email from John. He talked with Powers and Sullivan. He said he was wrong, that the audit was not supposed to start November 4th. It was supposed to start the week after that. All right, so he's talking to Powers and Sullivan, and I think he's going to address it with the Board of Selectmen too, as to what we could do to move it up. The other item that occurred, I believe, today, that the, I'm sorry, before I get to that, I received a letter, copy of the letter that went to John Foster. It's from the treasurer of the School Committee for Upper Cape Cod Regional Technical and the superintendent. Please be advised that 4 out of 5 members have approved the original budget presented in February 2012. We pretty much expected that. If you remember at town meeting, we put the money into the reserve account for the FinCom. The expectation, since the money is due, payments are due July 1st, October 1st, January 1st, and April 1st. Our first meeting, they will be putting in the transfer request as it was discussed at town meeting. So don't be surprised when you see it. And yeah, it's a pretty hefty number if you remember right. All right, but that's the easiest way for us to handle it. The other item is, if you were curious also about the settlement, we've had questions come out from a whole bunch of different people about settlement on the police arbitration award, etc. It hasn't been paid or wasn't paid. My understanding is that it is on the most recent warrant for that settlement to be paid. So it will be paid, yes. No, Mr. Donald, you had a question first.
I wanted an additional item. Are we going to write that? Did you have an opportunity to write the letter to Selectmen? about
No, I
that?
didn't. I'll have to go to the next chairman because we're not meeting this week.
I knew that was Council Moon's
Yes, Mr. Cameron.
Has that money for the police been allocated?
Yes,
That's all okay.
okay. It
Not
doesn't,
something we have to look for then.
and it does include a settlement for Quinn money as well.
Very good. Thank you.
Okay. Anything else? Does anyone else have any new business?
Thank you, you've done a wonderful job as the chairman.
Yes, you have.
What was this
Very
one
proud.
from?
Boo. That would be the last piece of business, and I want to, first off, thank you, Kelly. If anybody keeps me straight around here, it's Kelly.
Kelly's the best.
All right, it's been an interesting year. We've had our ups and downs with the administration, et cetera, but I think overall we had a very good year. All right, I give my personal feelings on it. It was at times a lot of fun to sit up here. I take a great deal of pride in the fact that all of you want to speak at every meeting. And when I first joined the FinCom, that wasn't the case. All right, and the conversation has always been civil. It's always 99% of the time it's been factual. On a few occasions, a couple of our members can have emotional outbursts. But I think that also many times adds to the conversation, and you'll know sometimes I do allow it. I have, especially when we had our prior town administrator, it was very easy sometimes to get into some emotional tests. I use some very strict Robert's Rules orders. I thank you for the tolerance. I think over time you all adopted it in great spirit. Nobody ever really came back and threw rocks at me for doing it. And nobody griped during the course of the meeting about the fact that I might have cut them off. I always try to get back to you as much as I could. But it has been a fascinating year. We are now getting some financial information. We've at least settled the format. I think we have good rapport. In the end, we actually had good rapport with the town administrator on some issues. Definitely with his office, we had good rapport. I think we have great rapport with the school committee now. Sandy's done a great job with it. All right. I find that basically we can talk to any of the department heads. And I find it also interesting that the information that everybody's been bringing back on the liaison side has been really fantastic. So I'm very pleased, but I also believe that it's important that you do change chairman every year. It's a lot of work, a lot of fun, and my greatest fear is that somebody comes by and says, well, it's Tom's committee, or it's Larry's committee, or it's Frank's committee. And that's one of the reasons why I encourage you.
You didn't include a woman in that.
I'm sorry.
Oh, okay.
It's Bonnie. Well, I'm sorry, you're 100% right. It's Bonnie's committee.
Next year, well, I'm not doing bingo.
So, it was a fascinating year. I'll continue to work in on a lot of things. It's hard for me. I can't do things halfway. I think you realize that. All right? And I thank you for at times putting up with me because, I've tried to keep you under control, but there's other times I think the conversation deserved to be looser, right? Because it covered some key facts, and I think it expressed the emotions of a lot of people that work for the town, have volunteered within the town, right, and live within the town. So I thank you for a great year. I really do. It was a lot of fun, and I will give you another good year, but not as a chairman.
Well, Iggy, thank you, Frank.
Thank you, Frank.
Okay. I hope you continue on. And remember, that's the real boss.
You want to set next meeting?
What?
Next meeting?
No, that'll be the next chairman. I have no more meetings this month. I don't see any need for any more meetings this month, unless you want to debate the school committee or something like that again. I don't think so. Take a couple of weeks to cool off. I think after the 4th of July holiday, probably the second week of July, Donna?
Yeah.
All right. It'll come out as to when the meeting. I would plan the second week of July.
Date, second week in July, please?
I don't know. Pick a date.
The 11th, 7/11. I like that number, 7 till 11.
That's the most logical one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
And I'll personally will work with the chairman to try to put out a tentative schedule.
Yeah.
I would also encourage everybody, like I said last week, I don't know that we should take off the whole summer
No.
because
No.
there's some issues like the trust, the retirement trust for healthcare funds and the pension funds and all those types of things. And we can't discuss those when we're trying to deal with the warrants.
Right.
So if we could at least address some of those issues this summer, would be really great. Really fantastic. I know people have tough schedules in summertime, but even if we get 5 or 6 of us together to do it, everybody seems to benefit from it. Without any further ado,
Motion to
I have a motion to
Second.
adjourn, I have a second, non-debatable, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Congratulations, Mrs. Crum. Meeting adjourned.
No, you can take it out.